Under the premise of our nonprofit is to believe that in order to improve the economy, quality of life, and to protect the wealth of Africa's resources, the African educational system must be centered on improving science and technology education. Science and technology has indisputably flattened the world, emphasizing the value of research as in high demand across the globe. In most African countries, the current investment in science and technology is only 5% of the gross domestic product, far too little to develop any competitive science and technology programs. To combat these issues, African countries must be able to develop, adapt, and exploit scientific and technological solutions that are appropriate for their specific needs. Otherwise, they risk becoming even more dependent on assistance from the developed world. Our primary goal is to alleviate some of the burdens of research by providing adequate basic supplies to deserving secondary schools and ultimately universities involved in both teaching and scientific research. Our aim is to help revive African teaching secondary schools and to support the development of centers of excellence in science, engineering, and technology. We hope to bridge the gap in research and education and to provide more avenues for those who come after us. We hope that the repurposing of research supplies for broader use will eventually equip secondary schools with laboratory supplies and train the next generation of African scientists to become future leaders of the world.
To accomplish our educational goals in Africa, we plan on developing a business model comparable to that of Red Cross or Blue Cross, which is donor-based driven organizations. We plan on soliciting donations from large companies such as Thermo Scientific and other large universities and matching schools with these equipments. We'll be identifying our donor base and going to crowdfunding sources such as GoFundMe or Indiegogo to solicit funds for maintenance of our organization. We'll also be using targeted marketing, and we'll be approaching pharmaceutical companies and other biotechnology companies for solicitation of donations. We'll be actively seeking alliances with organizations, governmental agencies, and advertising outlets. And we'll be using social media as a platform for advertising for our organization. We'll also be soliciting direct donations from individual labs and other universities. And we plan on applying for several grants such as the United States Agency of International Development Grants or the MERIT grant for other funds necessary for maintenance of our organization.
As mentioned in our business plan, we'll be receiving not only monetary donations, but donation of supplies needed for classrooms that we'll be supporting. And these materials will include glassware, lab coats, goggles, and pipettes, for example. Each classroom in secondary school in Africa has on average 28 students per classroom. And as you can see in this chart, this will be the quantity that we'll need of these materials per class. Our projected financial income outside of the supplies being donated to us, we'll be asking for donations through crowdfunding. We'll be applying for grants. We'll be asking for monies through fundraisers, and we'll be also incorporating our own personal money to this nonprofit organization. We have a 3-year plan in which the donations and the sustainability of our company has been described here in this chart. Our cost breakdown, the amounts of monies that we'll need to sustain our company will include the cost of shipping, storage, the website, trademarking our company, which is Bridge the Gap, our bank fee, and the amount needed for our fundraising events, including miscellaneous fees that may accrue while sustaining this company.
So what we want to accomplish for the first year of operation is to first launch the company, so to get licensed and trademarked, as well as launch the website and open a bank account. We then want to go on to get out our marketing and promotional strategies, and that will be to reach potential donors. Once we reach these donors, we want to also launch our packaging logistics. Once we get to quarter 3, we want to finalize our initial donor relationships and reach our secondary schools. and then take a look at our marketing and promotional strategies and strengthen those accordingly. By the time we get to Q4, we want to start receiving packages from our donors and solidify relationships with the secondary schools that we reach. By the end of the year, we want to actually start to ship out our first packages to the recipient schools. So at the end of each quarter, we'll have meetings to determine how successful we've been over the last quarter. So in these meetings, we will assess the completion of quarterly goals, determine whether top priorities have been met, and make any necessary changes to move forward and resharpen our focus towards the next quarter. So some of the things that we'll be looking at to determine our success in the organization is to look at promised sustainability among the relationships that we have with donors, as well as establishing working relationships with at least 2 schools by the end of the year. We also would consider ourselves successful if the grants and funding from our donors exceed our budgetary goals, and if once we establish relationships with the recipient schools, if those schools give great feedback and again shows promise for sustainability, then we consider ourselves a success over the first year.
As far as our competition, there's only one other organization that does something similar to what we do. However, it's not exactly the same. So Seating Labs primarily provides large equipment at a cost to the recipient university. So they require the recipient university to front a minimum of $50,000 to $200,000. Seating Labs does not provide supplies to secondary schools. There is an extensive and costly application process, and less than 40% of the proceeds go to universities in need. And it's likely that the universities who need the supplies most don't have $50,000 to $200,000 to front. Where we come in is that we primarily focus on providing disposable lab supplies such as lab coats, gloves, goggles, glassware, pipettes, paper towels, and chem wipes to secondary schools. We have a simplified application and donation process, and our services are free to recipients. As far as we know, we are the only organization dedicated to support early exposure to scientific lab experiments. So our team, as you've previously met, is comprised of Carrie Belton, a PhD scientist, and he's our marketing specialist. Josephine, also a PhD scientist, and she's our entrepreneur, and she provides us with legal management. Jamal James, also a PhD scientist, is in charge of our financial marketing. Sarah Owusu, a PhD scientist, is also responsible for logistics. And myself, Shantane Collins, also a PhD scientist, is responsible for public affairs. In addition to our team, we have a business and scientific advisors. So for our business advisor, we've actually going to be collaborating with Dr. Lewis, and he's a professor of accounting in the MBA program here at Penn State. And we'll also be collaborating with Dr. Avery August, and he's a professor of immunology and the chair of the department at Cornell University.